Hey there, and welcome to Comedians on Technology, People and Drugs. I'm your host, Sam Joseph, and today we're very lucky to have comedian Ella Clark with us. Hey, Ella, it's really great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for sharing your time.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Hello! Oh, Ella, you're a very funny person, and I think, we always speak to our listeners as if there was only one, and maybe there is only one. And this week, we'll be calling the listener Pat. And I think Pat is, besides himself, herself, themselves, wanting to understand your comedy origin story. Was it that you came from a race of comedic empaths and you traveled around the galaxy in a Warp's 8 starship, kind of like interpreting people and making them laugh? How did it all begin?
Well, Pat. Well, I'm sure I feel like this is something that most comedians will probably say, but does a breakdown count? I it's a funny one. I think I always stand up itself, I think as it does for everyone, always kind of amazed me. And I think when I was growing up, I think comedy was always a way within my family of us expressing our love for each other. It was kind of making fun of each other and things like that. So it was always kind of I enjoyed making people laugh. I've always been quite an outgoing person, but I really struggled with my mental health growing up. I was in hospital when I was a teenager, and then kind of went, and that subsequently meant that I kind of didn't really have the same life path as other people. I had to kind of drop out of college and drop out of school at various points. But then about about 2 years ago now, I came out of a long term relationship and I retired from professional kickboxing. And I kind of was at this kind of loss in my life, and I had moved back in with my parents, and I started listening to podcasts to help me kind of feel better. And one of them was Born Yesterday with Alexander Bennett and Andy Barr, who are two incredible comedians, and a couple of other podcasts as well. And I remember just the thing that really interested me was when I would hear them speaking about some of the behind the scenes of stand up, like the process of writing and things like that. And I would also listen to the relationship that they had and the way that they would laugh together and how funny I found that. And I just kind of on a whim was like, I can do that. I can do that. I want to do something creative. I've always been a writer. My family and I, we run a bookshop, so creativity is a big thing for me. And I just went and did a course up at Angel in London, and from there, kind of fell in love with it and got addicted. So it kind of went like that. But so it wasn't so much that to be a famous or rich person or any of that kind of notoriety was ever the goal. It was more this desire to find my tribe, my people, to be amongst an inclusive community of people that were there trying to make people laugh in a world that felt very dark. So for me, yeah, it's definitely it's almost a health thing for me. I think I'm a little bit of one of those annoying people that considers it somewhat of an art form.
Well, I think you're among friends here. It's yeah. Well, and what an amazing story. I mean, like so much to unpack. Professional kickboxer. Just, I mean, you talk about it in your set, but I'm just like, wow, cool. That's kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle kind of thing. I mean, is professional kickboxing at all like stand up, or is it a completely different world?
I think in terms of the level of obsession and dedication, absolutely. I think in terms of the kind of cult status of the cult like feeling of those who do it and those around you. And I tell you, actually, interestingly, one of the things that I find reminds me of kickboxing within the stand up is, and I don't mean this in a controversial way, but I think there's a lot. So one of the things that annoys me, I think, is you'll see people will be like, right, if you're not absolutely exhausted, gigging every single night, killing your family, quitting your job, you should be sweating, you should have no, that like there's a real rhetoric around that kind of, and I don't know whether it's kind of a little bit of a conflation to do with like that hustle culture and like pushing yourself to your absolute limits in order to get somewhere. But that very much reminds me of kickboxing, and I think that
Mm.
was part of the reason that I left, other than coming out of a relationship. But I also found that within that space it was very much a case of whatever you're doing you can work harder. And because I'd come from powerlifting, I was muscly, so I was heavy, so I used to have to lose a lot of weight. And I found that within a male dominated space, that was really triggering for me, because it was a lot of like, well, just eat less, move more. Like it was just constant, and that kind of can become toxic. And I think the reason that I wanted to move into something more creative, was that to give myself that space. And I think that 99% of the time comedy is that. And I do think that the community is so much more welcoming, and so much more, you feel so much more free to kind of lean into the silly side, and to have fun, and to think about it in a way of changing people's perspectives on things. But I think that obviously in some ways there are some, as with anything, there are some spaces within that that can sometimes feel like that pressure's coming back, and you constantly feel like you're not
Mm.
doing enough. But yeah, so yeah, very different, but echoes of each other.
Interesting, interesting. And you mentioned the podcast Born yesterday with Andy Barr and who was the other?
Alexander Bennett.
Alexander.
Everyone needs to go and listen to that podcast. It's absolutely
Right.
hilarious, as well as
Right.
like up there with this one.
Thank you so much. But I mean, it's lovely what you're saying there about the kind of the relationship between the two people and how they're having fun and talking. I mean, I think it's something, yeah, like there's something that the comedians do, even when they're on panel shows and they're bantering and having fun and so on. With the podcast on stage, there's something about that that's very attractive. That I think we all want to be a part of. And then so you comedy course at the Angel, as several other guests have mentioned doing before, and Angel obviously a wonderful place. That was, I mean, we've recently spoken to various people who've done theatre and other sorts of performance activities. I mean, I guess having done powerlifting and kickboxing and so on, the idea of doing comedy wasn't particularly intimidating. Like the idea of kind of being standing up there and so on. You were like, yeah, I can do that. That's
That's a really interesting kind of angle to ask that question from. Actually, I've not, because so I think one of the things that I've always found is that, generally speaking, things that make other people like shit their pants, like really scared, tend not to scare me in that way. And I
mm-hmm,
think a lot of that comes from growing up with really severe anxiety,
mm-hmm,
and really quite severe mental health struggles. I mean, by the time I was sort of 11, I kind of was having multiple panic attacks a day, which, and I'm not saying this as a sob story. I mean, it's a way of explaining the kind of the reason that I don't think about the nerves in that same way.
mm,
When I was about 11, it was a case of every time I had a panic attack, that felt to me the same as a near death experience might feel. Like it the only way that you can explain it is that it genuinely feels like your world is collapsing and you are going to die.
mm,
Because I kind of became desensitized to that level of immediate fear, and it was all focused on quite trivial things of like, I had a really big thing about I had really severe OCD, so germophobia and things like that.
mm-hmm,
Because people
mm-hmm,
focused on that, and all of that energy and anxiety was going towards kind of contamination phobia and things like that,
mm,
and then eating disorders and things like that as I became a teenager. Now, when I'm in the world, the nerves around stand up, and I do get nervous. Everybody gets nervous, but
mm, mm,
oh
mm,
my god, it's like whatever. I can do that in my sleep, because that it
mm-hmm.
will kind of like come close to that. And there are
Yes.
times that I kind of wish that I did have maybe a little bit more. Uh, I don't know, fear. Maybe it would give me an edge. I don't know,
Yeah.
but yeah, it never. For me, it was like I would watch stand up and see and the parts of it that I wanted to be a part of, and think, if I think I maybe could do that or could learn to do that, therefore I will.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So,
Everything else is just like whatever. And the kickboxing side of it definitely was that sense of like, okay, knuckle down, discipline, let's
mm,
do it.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, well, no, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I I mean, I've had some experiences in my life that nothing like what you're describing, and then thanks so much for sharing those things. You know, I'm a bit older, and you know, we there's you know, you know, there's people that we've lost, and in some ways, I don't understand why I get still so nervous. And people often say, "Oh, you look very confident." You know, it's a sometimes there's a lot going on inside. It sort of like logically, it feels to me some of the other things that have happened. Why should I care at all? But I think for me, I'm so invested in. People often say like they want the audience to like them. I don't really care if the audience likes me as long as they're laughing, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm so invested in wanting to extract laughs from the audience that you know the fact that I've come through other what have you doesn't take the sting out of my own personal nervousness. But we're all
That's wonderful. That's such a wonderful drive to have as well, because that's an inherently selfless drive to have as you come towards the stage. I think for so many people, they will perhaps not admit to, but the primary reason they're there is for that validation. And I think that if that comes on top, at times you can see that. And I think I have a real appreciation for comedians that come out, and you know that the dynamic that you're seeing is that they want you, the audience, to have the best time possible.
mm,
I think that there's
mm,
something quite special about somebody that can um, put the audience at the top of their priority list in that way, in a selfless way. I think that can create a real alchemy of comedy within the room.
I think a comedian like that would be fantastic, and if I ever meet one, I will let you know. There's it's a lovely description. I think in my hearts of heart, I mean, I do. It's not that I want the audience to have a bad time. I mean, I do want them to have a good time, but it is not so. It is not so much selfless as I find the laughter is kind of like a drug, and it's a
Mm.
hit, and I want hit after hit after hit, and you know, like people say, well, that's strange because a lot of the time you're not getting laughs. And like, well, you know, I'm doing this avant-garde experimental stuff, but yeah, it's I don't know, it's a weird thing. But you've obviously overcome, you know, extraordinary adversity, you know, and like you're saying that then, you know, stand up. It's which you know, for some people, it's a particular fear
Mm.
of you know, but it's you know, you know, for you, it's like not one of your big fears. And so signing up for a course was not a big deal. Tell us a little bit about the course and presumably the first performance at the showcase gig. How did that all go?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was I did it was Ben Tarjay, who's an excellent comedian. It's kind of 5 weeks of, you kind of get together, you talk a little bit about, you do some improv game type things, you talk a little bit about yourself and your comedy, and you think about stories, just as kind of like creativity boosters, and you go away and you write some stuff and you figure it
Mm,
out, and then kind of on stage. I think the fundamental reason that people do these courses is that it's like that push to get you on stage,
mhm,
because if I hadn't done it, me trying to sign up for a stand-up gig and figuring out like what the hell to do would be impossible. And I think one of the things that I still struggle with, and I think perhaps where the nerves and anxiety that some people have about the moment of stepping on stage, I think mine comes more in the sense of like this more overwhelming anxiety about the whole thing, and kind of self-doubt about the writing process, and whether or
mm,
not my I've even ever written a joke, or what even
mm,
is, or is it all just like derivative hack stuff. And
mhm,
like for me it's more that kind of self-analysis, and I think that because of that, because of all that overthinking and never
mm.
really knowing whether or not anything I was doing was the right thing to do, had I done it on my own without that course to just put me on stage and make me do something, I never would have done it. So I'm like so grateful to the team there, and the first showcase was lovely, and they create this wonderful environment in the room because everyone's families are there, so you get laughs no matter what.
Hmm.
And I remember being up there and my throat being so dry, but I had practiced and run through that set so many times that it was just like it just came out of me, and
Hmm.
it was incredible. And then since then, it true to me and my style. I went all in and just didn't sleep and just kept gigging as much as I could.
You threw yourself into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much an all or nothing person,
Hmm.
much so. Which I think I'm trying to learn to temper in order to not burn out and to keep myself on a keel and enjoy the process, because that's the point. Enjoying the process and learning along the way, as opposed to falsely chasing some sort of sense of an achieve a, you're the most productive comedian of the year award or anything like that. Like there's things that are just so meaningless, and it can be quite hard to put your blinkers on and block out everyone going, oh well, I do 3 a night, and it's like, well, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that's lovely.
Yes, yes. I mean, well, I think you and I cut from the same cloth there. I very much, having caught the bug, threw myself into it. I was really intrigued to speak to. I don't remember who it is now, but this is some of the folks we were speaking to in Japan. Was it with the other? I think it was Chris Natsume. He did a course with his son, which is very cool. And then he was like, "Yeah, that was fun." And didn't do it for a while. And then someone suggested, "Oh, you should do like." Some people, it takes a while to catch the bug, but yeah, yeah, like, and then I guess the first open mic was it the traditional coming down to earth from the lovely showcase?
100%, 100%. I had oh, actually no, the first open mic I did, I think the day after the showcase. I
All
was
right.
really lucky. The group that I did it with, we were all quite keen to keep going, so we were kind of messaging each other like
Oh,
little
cool.
like gigs that we'd found. And I'd gotten some advice from some people, and I went up to Comedy Virgins the day
Oh, yeah.
after, which I think is many comedians' first sort of first gig. And
Mm.
I took my dad with me, and it's a random lineup, which I will admit is one of the most horrifying things in the world, because especially when there's about 13 people on the lineup, your adrenaline every time they're calling the next person, your
Yeah,
adrenaline's going up and then coming down, and you are exhausted if you're
yeah,
anywhere near the end, because your adrenaline has been going as if you were going on.
yeah.
But I did it, and because I've been practicing my set so much, it was just in
Mm.
my head and it came out again.
Mm.
And I won the little trophy on the
Hey.
first gig, which was probably a bad thing, because
Mm.
that just sets you on a high. But it was amazing. And then I did a gig um, in East London, and the room was just comedians
Yeah.
and one family who had been drinking since 1 p.m.
Mm.
None of the comedians wanted to laugh, and the family were too busy trying to set their son up with one of the other comedians to be interested in me at all. And I kind of walked away going, oh no, what have I done, what have I done? And but true to form, just kept booking gigs and just
Right.
kept going, and just kept trying to figure it out.
Brilliant, brilliant, and then so I mean you already mentioned the danger of the all or nothing and then burning out, which yeah, I mean but with work and play and all sorts of things, I keep on flying too close to the flame, and then having to sort of like do something to my wings, deal with the burns or whatever. But so how has over the last few years, how has the gigging frequency evolved?
Well, I only finished the course in August last year.
Yeah, right, brilliant.
So I'm still a baby. I'm still new, and I have no authority or understanding of anything. But I think, to be fair, I think it started off. I was on. So Bit of background: I work full time because I run a bookshop, which is also a music venue and a comedy venue in
Mm,
Hampshire
mm,
with my family, which we're moving into a community ownership thing, and it's a kind of a community hub, which I don't get a lot of money for, any
mm,
money for, but
mm,
that's my
mm.
full time job. But I'm also doing a degree in sociology and criminology
Cool.
because I dropped out of my last degree when I was kickboxing. So I'm doing that as well. So that's two big streams, and then comedy is another one on top of that. And I don't live in London, so I travel into London to gig. So it's a lot. It is a lot. It's very tiring, but I'm kind of functioning at a bit of a 2 gig a week, 2 to 3 gigs a
Mm,
week at the
hmm.
moment, and that's good for me. I think at the start it was kind of 1 gig a week, then two, then three, then the odd four, and then by Christmas I was absolutely knackered. And I think the the thing that hit me coming back after a little bit of a break over Christmas was the exhaustion and like realizing how hard it was to go. But also, I think I don't know if this is something that comes up a lot, but the thing about comedy and writing comedy and comedy itself and stand-up comedy itself is it's such an ephemeral thing. I think it's such a confusing thing, and there is nobody's there going, this is correct, you've done this right, well done, that's a joke. um so I there's because there's it's not that I'm looking for validation, because I've thought about this. It's not, I don't think that it's that I'm looking for validation because I want somebody to give me attention. I think my fear became like the thing that I was like bumping up against in this period of burnout was it felt like I was waiting for somebody to be like, okay, well, yeah, no, that's stand up that you're doing, that's correct, those are jokes, that's okay, you can keep going. Because in my head it's so, and that's what makes it wonderful, is that it's so weird and so different and everyone does it differently. But I think I've never reached a point where I'm satisfied with my stand up or the jokes that I write or the way that I'm doing it. Um, a perfectionist at heart and somebody who overthinks to the nth degree. I think it can be quite. It's easy to kind of fill yourself with self doubt over whether what you're doing is the right thing, whether you're going in the right direction. I think. So I think when you feel like that, the motivation to be able to get up and go and gig and stuff, it can be hard. But you just, yeah, it comes in waves. But it's a funny
Mm.
thing. It's a funny old thing, creativity, I think, especially in a crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think 2 or 3 a week is a good sustainable path. Particularly, the I mean, I say that partly. I mean, people say other things about this amount or that amount, whatever. But bottom line for all of this thing is like it's about the journey, and enjoying the journey and having a sustainable journey. But when you said that, immediately after the showcase, the very next day you went to Comedy Virgins and so on, and you were sort of talking about, all or nothing. I had a vision of you kind of like doing multiple sets a night, like for the next.
No,
It
oh
sounds like
yeah, God, no.
slightly more.
I think my bank account would not thank me for
No,
that.
no, no.
Train tickets to London wise.
Yeah, yeah. Well, then of course, as I mentioned on the podcast many times that you might be aware. I mean, I sort of sneakily get. I managed to get like, uh, is it four at the moment, or is it? I don't get confused. But I managed to get I get two virtual reality gigs in a week, which don't involve any traveling. So I mean, it's a different thing. But that before we leap into that, I mean, we're already talking about writing and so on. Let's use that to jump into the next question, which is about how technology affects your life and comedy. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have brought the VR. I was very interested in what you were saying there about these things you were mentioning about no one saying it's correct, or you can keep going, and the desire, with your own material and like, okay, how does it go? And then the challenges of gigging. I mean, but my approach has been to try and like, for some reason, I want to get better at doing this. Whether it's
Mm.
just, an ego thing, like I want to show that I can do this and I can be good at doing this. And so, whether it's setting up my own nights or working out how to do comedy through virtual reality, I've tried to create as many opportunities to do comedy. Whether that was the right strategy or not, time will maybe ultimately tell. But yeah, I mean, for the question that we often ask second is how is technology affecting your life and comedy? And by technology, that's it's broadened out to, it could be pencil and paper, stone tablets, latest AI model, video recording, social media, all of these things. And yeah, like technology abounds in this crazy world. It's one of the reasons it's getting more and more crazy, I think. And I'm really interested both in how that affects your life and your comedy and the creation of the comedy material. So yeah.
Mm. It's a really interesting question, actually. I think technology, technology. I've been worrying a lot about AI. I think it's an easy thing to worry about in the world that we live in, I think. And I think particularly in creative industries or anything like that. I mean, I I own a bookshop. Bookshops and AI aren't very good friends, but I also am pragmatic in that I don't think that I think that the progress in that sense is inevitable, blah blah blah. And I read a lot about it and I worry about it. I think one of the interesting things that I've found with the rise of things like ChatGPT and AI and things like that is that I worry about losing my critical thinking skills, losing my not not for any particular reason, just that, or maybe the world losing their critical thinking skills. I don't know if you've read A Brave New World, or any of those, or even Infinite Jest, that kind of thing. The idea of us kind of moving towards this dystopian. What I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud because it's like it's a trope that people go, oh well, we'll all be robots, we'll all be robots, we'll all be, but that does worry me, and I think, but at the same time, I think that the function of AI and all of that is really important. But yeah, I am a reluctant user of technology in that sense. That's really interesting. My relationship with technology, you don't think about it because it's so much part of your life, isn't it? You do not think about it. And technology, because that could mean anything as well. It's become so ubiquitous. And I think I'm a very young political person as well. So I think I struggle with the ethics of it. I struggle with the exploitation and direction of it and those types of things. But I think one of the things that I really find with it is that it makes me feel like I have to live my life on fast forward. It makes me
Mm.
feel like I don't have time to slow down and consider my options in life and make decisions. I feel like I am racing against some unstoppable train of progress in society that's going towards a place where I might not have a role as it goes forward. I think I was discussing with someone the other day who was talking about the fact that they'd kind of come into the creative world late in life after working in a corporate job for years, and they now felt like they were constantly racing against time because they might come to the end of their life, and they'd wasted all these years. And I said, well, that's really interesting because I feel like I'm approaching everything I do in life with the same sense of urgency that you are, but I'm in my 20s. And I think the reason for that is, and I'm sure this is part of me just being an anxious person, but it feels as if the future has become very uncertain as a result of a lot of these technologies. The future has become, I used to really want to be a journalist, and it's still a part of, I do a lot of writing in that sense, and obviously I would like to be a stand-up comedian as well, and there are loads of kind of creative projects that I'd like to do in that sense, and film writing, screenwriting, and all sorts of things. But every time I think too much about technology, I feel this overwhelming sense that we're kind of moving towards a space where I don't know what that looks like anymore, and I don't know how to prepare myself. Um, that being said, there are some pretty cool AI websites that help me sort my bibliographies for uni. So
Swings and roundabouts. Yeah.
these must.
collapsed society, but handy when doing an index. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very. I mean, I've been a programmer all my life, and we now have tools that will do the programming for us. And yeah, there's like it's a weird situation, and I'm confronting this issue of I mean, the last probably 2 going on 3 years, I've been sort of programming, increasingly and certainly for the last 2 years, almost exclusively with AI. And
That's
it's
really interesting, that transition. How did that did that feel monumental to you?
it was certainly a watershed to be able to ask a system to be able to generate this code for you. I mean, there've been code generators of a kind before. I mean, when GPT-4 came out, it was night and day to GPT 3.5, and then now it's becoming uh, I think for a lot of programmers, they don't type code anymore. They just ask the AI to generate it. And then I think there's all sorts of questions about how well you understand the code if it's been generated by the AI. And there's some people who've said, and I know people. I have another podcast called AI Leadership, and we've had people on that who are like CTOs of companies, and they're like, I don't care about the code. It's outsourced completely to the AI. And they say if they look at it, that makes them a bit sad, but they focus on like just they're busy iterating to try and create a new startup or what have you. So it's just like we don't care about the really the quality of the code. We just need these features and they need to be locked down. And it's just, I mean, I think it's not completely dissimilar, or obviously the differences from artists and creative types. And like you're saying, I think we were talking to Lizzie Simpson a couple of episodes back and talking a lot about AI. And I think she was expressing the fear that, AI there, if it's coming up with your jokes, you're losing the one of the most beautiful human exciting parts of doing comedy, which is the process of creation of the jokes themselves. And so if you're tempted to end up outsourcing all of that, similarly with your art and your music and so on, then like in that process we potentially lose something. So it's the world is providing humanity, or we're providing ourselves with an extraordinary challenge. How we'll cope, I mean, it's is anybody's guess. But maybe to be go on.
Well, I was going to say that's really interesting because I think the two things can be true at once, isn't it? It's the idea that in some ways, I mean, that's really, I must listen to your other podcast actually, because that sounds really interesting. I've just read a book called Empire of AI about OpenAI and the development of the company itself, which was really interesting. But I think two things can be true at once in that it's offering us almost infinite opportunities to perhaps live a more creative life, in that some of those administrative tasks it can be taken care of. Some of the things that hold us back from being able to have the time to be creative might be taken care of. But at the same time, so much of the the process and the humanness of art creation is in those small moments, is in that the slog, the writing, the one moment that something comes into your head that's just amazing. And also, how does humanity respond to it, I think, as well, because if we kind of as a collective decide to direct this AI towards something that can be more useful and something that is as you say, kind of taking away those more administrative sides, so that we are more free to do these more creative things, or more free to focus on the things that will actually enhance the quality of life of other people? Or do we think that humanity will take the more easy route and use it to write their comedy sets? Not that it is in any way near capable of doing that. If you've ever asked ChatGPT to write a joke, it's quite horrifying. But there's two levels of it, I think, but that also, I think, adds into the idea that everything is the pressure to be just like creating, going, and going as fast as you can, because you're thinking, okay, well, everyone's going, okay, well, AI should be doing your emails and all of those things, so you can be doing this. So because AI is there now, it's almost like the bar's being raised, for just how much you can produce, just how much you can do, just how much you can fit into your day. And I don't know about anyone else, but my head is full already. I don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, yeah, no, completely agreed, completely agreed. But so I'm really interested. Tell us about your creative process with comedy as it is, as it stands, and you know, AI is a big thing, but there's also just social media and recording your sets or like using your phone for notes for ideas and so on. What does the process of coming up with jokes and getting them onto the stage look like at the moment?
My notes app is where I am, where the thoughts go, the random thoughts. You wouldn't want to look through it. It looks insane. I think I've kind of touched on it already, but I find the process of writing comedy very high pressure and very scary and very confusing. And it's hard as well. I think one of the things that I love is when you get into like a flow state with writing. I love to be able to sit and, you know, I edit a newsletter. And when I'm like really in the flow of a book review or I'm really in the flow of an editorial piece, oh, it's just the most amazing feeling when you, or even like writing an academic essay when you realize that 4 hours have passed and you've written 4,000 words and it's awesome. And with comedy, I think it's so hard. And I have, so many times during the day, I have thoughts or make connections or find things interesting, and I think that's really great. And then I sit and I think, oh, I'll sit down and I look at my laptop and I open up a Google Doc, and it's just this blank page staring at you, going, "Well, be funny." And I think, what is funny? What is a joke? And it can be really hard to then like figure that out. And I think one of the biggest things for me was just kind of overcoming that thing of like, what I write on this page doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be anything. It just has to be words that are coming out of my mouth, my fingers on my mouth or whatever. So I've just kind of gotten more into the habit of just recording experiences, recording observations that I make, recording just things that I think about that I think are funny. And then over the next few days, I might kind of test it out with somebody. Like just say, I was thinking the other day, do you think that rescue dogs go back to Battersea Dogs Home to give talks about how their journey? I said to my mum the other day, and she looked at me and she went, "Are you mental?" I'm like, I thought it was funny, but it won't work. Like you just test it out, and then maybe later down the line you try and write it up into a document when you're on your way to a gig, and you might say it on stage, and then later down the line you think, okay, well, no, I need to change it up. And it kind of iteratively comes like that. But as I say, I am in no way happy, or like I'm still searching for my process. I'm still searching for the way that works for me. And I think, especially coming from a more long form writing background, I very much think narratively. I very much think in the sense of like a story structure of like beginning, middle, end, and things kind of linking together in that sense. You wouldn't find me as a one-liner comedian or anything like that. And I think very much more in like a flow state and in trying to get across an idea. So I think that for me, when it comes to writing, I very much come from a place of I'm still searching for that the nub, the crux of my persona and a message that I'm trying to get across. And often I'll find, okay, well, I've been thinking a lot about the rise of misogyny in the world. What are some ways in which I see that? What are some ways ways in which that's contradictory? What are some ways in which that's stupid? And therefore, what are some ways in which I can find that funny? So in that sense, I'm kind of looking for a way to get a message across almost in my own head, not because I'm trying to preach, but because it's making my head feel itchy if I don't get it out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't understand why Japanese soup is quite so popular. And you say ChatGPT can't write a joke, but that's an AI generated joke.
Oh dear me.
I mean, so sorry to throw a thing there. I mean, like it's a serious subject, which we could absolutely get into. I just, since you mentioned that word, that was. I mean, it's sorry to go back to the AI. That's like it's a whole area of mine that I prompt engineer and fine tune and do things to try and make AI generate jokes, as I've said before, which is for me, it's not about having the machines replace the humans in generating the jokes. It's I want to understand the mechanics of how comedy can be generated. But I
That's
feel anyway, go on.
interesting though, because I think, I mean, one of the things, especially with large language models, is the whole it's you have to train it. You have to put you have to be you have to you get out what you put in and the
Mm.
whatever data. So that does interest me. The way in which the process of that happening, and I guess in some ways, in terms of you having to train it to do that and you putting in all of those prompts, you are in that sense learning the subtle structures and the technicalities of jokes within that, and it becomes almost like a second brain.
It's yeah, we had Gareth Beavis was talking. He was trying to
Oh, lovely, Gareth.
yes, brilliant. Trying to he's working with AI, trying to have turn it into sort of a comedy trainer that where it's not generating the humor, but it's helping scaffold you through the process of right now do that again from this angle, now do that again from this angle as a kind of sparring partner. And I think there's yeah, I mean back to your original. I think you were saying the two things can be true at the same time. I mean, there's the same with social media, which can cause huge mental health issues, but it can also be a support structure. It's just yeah, all of these technologies, these powerful technologies, can be used for both good and ill. Yeah, it's. I was really interested in what you say about the flow state with writing. I mean, and then the tyranny of the blank page. I mean, I do this thing that Callum suggested, which is like writing 10 jokes a day. Jokes is a strong word. That I find that I'm through the process of over the last year forcing myself to try and write 10 jokes a day. The blankness is kind of now it's not it's less intimidating, and I've almost kind of like adjusted my brain so that now almost anything anybody says I'm look like automatically looking for the second meaning and the third meaning and it is a strange practice,
That
but oh, go on.
interests me. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's so interesting because I think you can read so many books about comedy. You try and figure it out, but I can never. This is what I was trying to say about that kind of the ephemeral nature of it is because it's different for everyone. You never really know what the right thing to do is. So I've kind of heard something similar to the to write 10 jokes a day. And I
Hmm.
thought about it for a while. And then I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then I thought, okay, well, you sit down at a blank page. And then I think, okay, well, how do I write 10 jokes? So what is that process for you? When you sit down and you think I need to write 10 jokes, what are you thinking?
So, so there's several things that I do. One thing that I do is I try and completely empty my mind. And there was a point at which I was often like thinking about the emptiness of black space and a black hole, and something would come out like a slipper or whatever. And then, so that it's almost like there's a sort of improv game that you play where you have to like take things out of an infinity bag, and then you have to like, all right, it's a shark, it's a tennis ball, it's a what have you. And then, so if I've got that's a word like a slipper, then I'm like, okay, how can what interpretations are there of that word? So, it's like, I made these bedroom shoes out of banana skin peels. They were really slippers. Is a stupid joke, but and so what I often do now, I'm often emceeing and I'm writing little notes on what everybody's saying, because I'm trying to come up with things that I'm going to say in the like maybe like as I introduce the next act, I'm going to tag something from the previous set, and I often end up with a whole page of little notes and little phrases or what have you. But so then I might go back to them after the like any source of text of words that I could take that are like interesting words that can be used two ways. And I guess if one was uncharitable, you'd say, "Oh, mate, you're busy nicking other people's comedy material." I'm very much trying not to. It's often though, just that's like people are saying word and they're just saying a phrase. Like go, that's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And there's the comedian hasn't done a joke, but they've just used that phrase. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting phrase. How can I play with that? And these are not the 10 jokes are not particularly ones that I'm trying to build into my set. I'm just trying to practice the comedy muscle of any time any word comes up, how can I flip the meaning?
that thinking about thinking in opposites and thinking in subverting and surprising and things like that. That's really interesting. And I think as the more you kind of look at, because I think, well, neither of us, oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not I'm not a punster, you know, or my style tends to be more to do with kind of storytelling and anecdotal and things like that. But there is something about the comedy muscle, I think, is such an interesting idea, because I was thinking the other day, I was looking through it. I was doing exactly that. Actually, I was just like looking at words and making puns and doing things like that. But what you find when you do that is that as you're going through the world, you think about you are in that state of thinking in a subverting. You're thinking about ways that can that quick thinking way of making something funny and shifting perspective. And I think for me that's the fundamental thing about comedy, and the thing that drew me to it is the idea of shifting perspective and looking at things in a different way. And that's, I'll tell you what, you and Callum have convinced me. I'm gonna be writing my 10 jokes today.
I think it's one of many things. I mean, we had Hannah Lloyd Davies talking about doing the morning pages. There are so many little things that one can potentially enjoy and have an impact. Yeah, I mean, like I probably could do now. I don't know if it'd be a good one. I could probably do. I've got enough. I've probably written like 3,000, 4,000 of these. They're not really just, but these comedy tinged sentences. I mean, if I'm lucky, they're comedy tinged. Probably like I could take 20 of them and do like a one liner thing. But I'm not really. I'm. I'm totally agreeing with you in that sort of story narrative are like the comedians that I've been most excited about are the ones who are telling a story, but they're doing sort of like like what's the word, flips of as you go along. And I think there's the flip at the individual word level, and then there's the flip at the situation level with a which is more complex.
Yeah,
And I mean, actually, that's the one that will generally get the much bigger laugh. But on the journey toward, like, because I mean, in principle, you could be a storyteller and not particularly have any humor in it at all, and it could still be an engaging story. And then there's like, I guess there's different sizes. Like you can tell a story, and there can be some like minor flips on some of the individual words, and then there can be some flips on a phrase, and then there can be some flips on the kind of like the circumstance that you've created and how it's being looked at from one perspective, and if you can flip it to the other perspective. I mean, and that's the I think that's where the gold
wow,
is. But
absolutely.
yeah, but I'm sort of telling myself that the finding the little, because I think that when I listen to professional comedians, and so I think that they have all of those things. There's like some of their stuff is like based on a little silly wordplay, and then other bits of it are on a bigger reinterpretation of an entire situation. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and it
yeah.
puts you in that mindset, I guess, as well. It's so wonderful, isn't it? Comedy. I mean, it is. It does just amaze me.
It is amazing. I mean, I also relate to what you're saying about like not no. I mean, I'm confused about what is actually fun. What's so strange is how things that could be very funny in one room don't seem to get that much in another room. And I feel like there's so many from a scientific point of view, variables. So it's like, there's like the mood the audience is in. There's like how nervous you are. You're like how tired you are. All these other different bits and things. And the idea of that, solid gold joke that will work almost everywhere under every circumstances, and it would be. I mean, yeah, like for me, yeah, I don't even know if I've got any really reliable. Have I got reliable jokes? I'm not sure. Well, I was going to say, are we? Yeah, I think we've heard about the process. Let's move on to our third question, which is that well, and I want to say by the way, misogyny a huge problem. I thought we'd fix that in the 90s, and I just the I thought my mother was a radical feminist, and I thought we'd worked out equality and it was all sorted. Apparently not so, and I'm deeply disturbed by that. So we could certainly talk more about that. But maybe in the context of which people have had the biggest impact on your life and comedy.
Oh, well. My mother is also a radical feminist. My mum is a wonderful human being. She has a PhD in sociology, so I kind
Mm.
of grew up reading Karl Marx and Anne Oakley before I could walk. But I think both of my parents, I'm really, really lucky with both of my parents. I think a lot of people have difficult relationships with their parents, and a lot of that comes out in people's comedy. But for me, I used to make this joke with my parents actually. I wish you guys could have been, got divorced or been more annoying, so that I would have had to. But no, they've been incredible, and I think that especially me being ill when I was younger, I think it drew us closer together as a unit. And having moved back in with them a couple of years ago when I retired, they've been everything, and they think about things in such an interesting way. And my dad, he spent years as an engineer, and then when I wasn't very well, he started writing books. He started writing a diary, and he got addicted to it because he was writing a diary about how he was feeling about me not being very well, and then he turned it into a book about a girl who was in a psychiatric hospital. And he published it, and then he started publishing more books, and then we opened the bookshop. And since then, he's been on this kind of political awakening. He started reading about misogyny and all of those things, and he's really opened his eyes, and he really inspires me as a human being, because he has overcome kind of years worth of coming from a very conservative family, and all of those things, and is completely open to, he now owns a high street bookshop that's also a music venue, a safe space for trans people in the community, runs mental health groups, and all of those things. So I think my parents are two people that are bloody amazing. And I think within comedy, I would have to give a shout out to Pierre Novelli and Alexander Bennett and Andy Barr, because they were three comedians that I used to watch religiously, because I find that anyone who is kind, intelligent, and genuinely funny makes me want to make the world a better place. And yeah, they've just, those three people within comedy, plus my parents, plus Laura Bates, wonderful feminist author who I interviewed and got me thinking about the world in a different way. And final one would be Rhys James, because I interviewed him about his book at the shop just as I was starting comedy. And I actually said to him about the worry that I have around writing, and he said to me that a joke is just something that you say that somebody laughs afterwards, and that put my mind at ease in such a big way. So yes, well, there you go. I didn't realize I had a list in mind.
But brilliant. No, Rhys James, I was just enjoying, or being, well, as we say, enjoying and being envious of him on Mock the Week yesterday.
Oh, I know, amazing.
He is very funny. Yes, and you were saying like, how impressed you were with people who are kind, intelligent, and genuinely funny. Yes, I'm going to work on being genuinely funny and kind. Well, it's funny because there's a kind of like, to go back very briefly to, I hope briefly, to what I was saying about wanting the audience to laugh. And you lovelily interpreted that in a kind of like, oh, that's a selfless, you want them to enjoy themselves. Like there's this, I think we all have darkness in so like there's like, who we are is like, we sort of present an aspect to the world, and I think we're all filled with dark and light, and there's a struggle between the dark and light, and like I can sense inside me there's a part of me that wants to, if I had the charisma and the power or whatever, I will stride the world with a sword, a branding sword, and legions of people will bow before me. I mean, I just don't have the, whatever Trump has that helping him do it. But damn, I shouldn't have said that. I'm not going to let me into the US anymore. But hopefully they don't listen to postcards, will they? They're nice people. Anyway, no, but like,
Well,
what can you do? It's he said trying to bring it home and get back to back to you, but there's this kind of like there's a I can sense these different sub personalities within me. Some of which are kind of like, yes, we want to, but then there's also a desire for harmony and peace and everyone, equality and everybody getting on well, and just everybody thinking, that I'm funnier than everybody else in the world. I mean, it's you got to work with these different things. But there
That's
was,
really, I think there's a difference as well, though. There's a difference between wanting notoriety and wanting belonging. And I think that I very much feel that I approach everything I do, including comedy, with a kind of a more intrinsic desire to belong, to find a community, to find a tribe, and part of that is validation that you are good enough to be part of this tribe. We value you. We think you're funny, or we think you're a good writer, or we think you are good at singing, whatever. And I think that that's where my motivation and my methods maybe diverge from the kind of the culture of sort of knuckling down and being like, okay, well, what's the fastest way to get a Netflix special?
mm,
It's very much, it's less like that for me. I think for me, because comedy in that sense can be a very solitary and very lonely pursuit, and I don't really, I don't like to think about it in that way, because I think some of the times that I've felt least alone is when I've sat and watched a comedian who has articulated things in a way, and obviously you recognize that it's all written, and it's very, honed and all of that, but they articulate things in a way that unlocks a perspective of me looking at things about myself or the world, or it just brings me joy because it's silly and it's funny. And that those are the times that I've felt the least alone in the world. And
mm.
I think that's what drew me to comedy, and everything else is part of me trying to be within that world and find a sense of solace in maybe being able to create something even half as good as that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was, I forget who it was. This was on it was on Stuart Goldsmith's podcast, and he's interviewed many, many people, and I forget
Indeed.
who it was he was interviewing, but someone, I think it was a female comedian who, when he was interviewing her in Australia, I don't know if she was Australian or not, but it was talking about how comedy's got this aspect of you're holding up part of the human experience. You've got a little shard of the human experience, and you're saying, "Oh, has anybody else had this experience? Do you relate to this experience? If I draw your attention to this, will that, can we go somewhere with that?" And that there is, that, like, I think that was what you were just saying made me
Yeah.
think of that. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, it's one of the things that does give me great joy is, I mean, I've now got, little WhatsApp groups. I mean, there was one off the original comedy course that I did, but most of the people stopped doing it, and that's not really, survived. But I've now got, like these little WhatsApp groups based around the Hilarity Unlimited UK gigs that we run, and I'm in these little group chats with comedians, and we're doing this like admin stuff for sorting these gigs or whatever. But they're all very funny people, and they will, like, it's just it's a lovely WhatsApps to be a part of, because there will be little bits of banter there, and this, that, and the other, and yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just conflicted because, yeah, I do like the belonging, but I want the notoriety as well. I want people to think he's a bit, what's he got? Right. Anyway, yeah, yeah.
That's great. I just want friends. I'm just
You're so much better than me. I'm gonna, I've got a lot to learn. It's yeah, and but you've got a friend there. Who's this friend who's co-appearing on the podcast?
my dog Molly has come to sit on my lap.
Hello, Molly.
She
Yeah.
can't wait.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. Great to have animals there. I mean, well, I was about to like segue off into like what Eckhart Tolle says about animals, but that's maybe for the later section. Shall we move on to after? Well, thanks so much, by the way, for sharing. The big shout outs to your mum and your dad and all the other people there. Let's move on to our next question, which is, how do drugs affect your perception of reality? And by drugs, I mean all substances. And so, you say drugs and people are like, okay, that's kind of like illegal drugs, hallucinogens or whatever, if you talk about perception of reality. But I think, how we perceive the world is affected by whether we've had that, how much nicotine or caffeine or alcohol or all of these things. And then there's all sorts of, like prescription drugs and so on. But, I mean, lots of people we talk to don't do any particular drugs, but they are completely addicted to fast food. do you have any substances that are regularly affecting how you perceive the world?
Yeah, definitely. This is another interesting one actually. I mean I've been on antidepressants since I was 10,
Mm,
which is very young, and some people get a bit cross with me when I say that because they don't think that people should be. But no, yeah, so I've been on SSRIs for like 15 years now.
mm,
Uh, and there's I go back and forth on it about whether or not it's changed me as a person or whether or not it means that and I wouldn't know because I've come of age having been on them for a decade, but I reached a point with pondering that at which I was like, if I wasn't on them, I I wouldn't be here. It wouldn't. It allows me to function in the world. So there's that. I also have ADHD, and I'm on medication for ADHD, um, which is more fun. Um, that changed my life in a big way in terms of pulling me out of a real hole and making me realize that I didn't have to live with my brain functioning the way that it was. Um, and still nicotine,
mm,
still nicotine. That's So I used to work in a pub, and the only way that we would get breaks is if
hmm
we smoked, and I didn't smoke, so I started smoking, and then I became a professional athlete, and I had to stop smoking, but I could chew nicotine gum, so I never quite kicked that, but I do find it helps with the old anxiety sometimes.
mm,
Uh, Illegal drugs, though, I liked weed. Oh yeah, I loved weed, but I never went harder than that because I struggle with well, because of my mental health really, and my ex partner was a big cocaine taker, and that ruined me. And I think that I struggled with people not being very nice people when they were on those types of drugs, so
mm,
I never really went near that. And I also didn't, yeah, I just didn't like that. But um, but weed and magic mushrooms, I have enjoyed the way that that makes me perceive the world at times.
mm, mm. Yeah, I mean, some people say that's a a potential door to creativity. Um, yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, like I had some experiences on magic mushrooms a very 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 long time ago that were quite eye-opening. I mean, these days, I'm I had, as I said before, given up coffee and alcohol, caffeine and alcohol for like about 3 years, and I'm slowly letting myself come back onto them like at a very measured pace. I think I may have to like stop the caffeine again. It's the danger is that it comes back to the burnout. Like it's so tempting to use it to
Work,
like
yeah.
yeah to overwork and then it ends up yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky managing that. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's that's yeah, like you say the well, I said he said showing off selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Oh,
I did to go to university. Well, or particularly we were looking at cognitive science. My father was a sort of a neurochemist, so that was his
okay.
big area for him. But yeah, that's yes, that it's an interesting one, isn't it? With the like as you were describing, having been on these things for since very young, I was thinking of the phrase lives of quiet desperation, and there's this funny divide between what on the one hand, uh, like thinking that you know like our drugs are these sort of prescription drugs, are they a crutch, and you know, or at the same time, are they, the things that just some people need to avoid the the good. the lives of quiet desperation. That maybe that was in the good old days. That was people just were unhappy all the time.
Yeah, I think it's really because I mean, I've had a lot of time to think about it, and I think about it a lot, and I've gone back and forth on it, and I had a similar thing with the ADHD medication. Like, is this real? Like, do you need this? Is this just, like all of those things? But what I always have to come back to is just, and what I think I would stress to others who maybe worry about people judging them for being on it, or kind of doubt themselves, is that it if there's no way of saying it without it sounding really dark, but it saved my life, because they do pull you out of a hole.
Mm,
And they're through them lifting my mood to an extent and decreasing the noise in my brain and the anxiety that I would deal with on a daily basis, to an extent that I can function in the world, that I can make decisions about what I want to eat today, that I can make decisions about going for a walk. They allow me to do that. And
mm,
I could sit here and go, okay, so let me make a plan to come off all my medication slowly, and really start working on my brain and do that. But I'm like, okay, well, that would involve me taking a year out of my life, and
mm.
so yeah, I understand that the kind of the ways in which people doubt it, or think that there are loads of different ways that you can think about it. But for me, it allows me to function, and for that I'm grateful. um and who knows, maybe one day I'll forget to take them, and then I'll finally write that perfect joke that works in every single room.
Well, you never know, or maybe they'll have new drugs, and those will help. I think we will. I'm just reminded actually because we were speaking to now. Who was it? We were speaking to. Gosh, and this is why I have this list of all the people that we've spoken to because I'm starting to. Oh gosh, this is now. Oh, really, no, one. There's now so many people that I can't fit them all on one page. So it was we were speaking to Chloe Campbell, who I think
Ah,
also yeah, and she did come off them and like at one point and that worked out well for her. But yeah, everybody's different and different paces. I guess the thing that worries me is that there are companies that make these substances that profit when more people are taking these substances. And then I talk about with my friends. There are, supposedly rigorous controls. I think it's I mean, but the same could be leveled at the people making the alcohol and the caffeine and the nicotine. That there's a it's the profit motives that behind all of these substances that
I
that
would say that
worries
I
me.
completely agree with that, and I do also worry about that, and I think that is a worry in the privatization of any industry. And I fundamentally think that these things should be better regulated in that sense. um yeah, so who knows, maybe maybe I am I'm simply money into the pocket of big pharma. But at the minute, that's the other thing, is that at the minute, like, it's what options do people have to come off them? Like, there's no space in the world to
Mm.
take that time to come off them. See, this is
Well,
what I mean. It's a cyclical thing. You can, because I mean, I spend half my time reading socialist books. I I I know about the worries with that as well. But but yeah, no, I don't drink. I don't do other kind of I don't smoke weed anymore. But that's the one thing that I've always stuck with, has been those. So yeah, maybe one day we'll see.
yeah. Well, and I think no one has true insight into how it feels to be you. I don't mean you individually, all that's true for you. It's also true for me. It's true for our listener Pat and all the other people in the world who are out there not listening to this podcast. Why are they not doing it? That's really what they should be doing. But yeah, it's yeah. There was something else I was going to jump to, but I distracted myself with the joke about Pat. Sorry, Pat. There was something I was talking about. But yes, it's a funny. Oh, that was right. 'Cause I was going to connect it back to what you were saying before about this. like we're so super busy, like, and the AI is doing these things, and this is happening, and this is happening, whatever. So we're in this like headlong rush to do this thing. So who's got time to put down the substances to then? But let's segue into our final question, which is, what does it all mean? This life, this universe, and this everything, and take that any way you want. I mean, it's like I wonder, is it a simulation? Is it a dream? It seems very strange in many ways. That's kind of how I like it. But but this, I mean, this question can be like, oh, it's ridiculous middle class question. It could be ridiculed and has been on the podcast. But it could just be derivative. What gives your life meaning?
People
But
ridicule you by saying it's a ridiculous middle class question.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's so bourgeois.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, well, maybe you can ridicule the ridiculous, but yeah, I'm interested in what it could be religious or philosophical, or like they're saying, like the socialist or feminist. What tribes of thought influence how you see the world?
Well, the answer to life, the universe, and everything is obviously 42. But
Correct.
I think, well, interestingly, actually, I have been reading Camus recently, who is a wonderful, well, author slash philosopher. And I mean, oh, this is the most pretentious I've ever sounded. I do apologize, but it's only because it's on my mind and it's interesting. But his kind of one of his focal points of inquiry is this idea of the absurdity of human life and the theory of the absurd. And his idea was that the absurd is the notion, it's the experience of coming to realize the meaninglessness of life, that nothing means anything. It is completely meaningless and inconsequential. If you think about things hard enough, nothing matters. Everything is a social construct. It is all just bollocks. But what he said was that the key to life was confronting that and resisting it and living and creating anyway. And I think that is where I've come to with life. And I think I don't come from a religious background. I don't come from any kind of, or even, particularly like radical political background. I'm very much more of a, although some would say radically left wing, but for me, I think the world and life can be and is completely meaningless, so meaningless and so painful and hard and pointless a lot of the time, but there is always something that you can do. There is always some tiny decision you can make within the moment, whether that be just doing something nice for someone else, whether that be writing down a thought you have, drawing, eating something, whatever. It's when you get to that point of existential kind of absurdity, of bringing it back and resisting it, and choosing to live and create anyway. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Who'd have thought I would have had that in my back pocket this evening?
love it, love it, brilliant. Yeah, I really like what you're saying there about every moment, which is something I'm kind of agree. As people have heard before, I'm particularly, I'm kind of Eckhart Tolle addicted, and he talks a lot about just the vitality of the particular moment,
Mm.
and kind of like just really being in the moment, because we get pulled away from the moment to like that thing that happened yesterday, the thing that happened tomorrow, constantly being pulled away from the precise moment of now. And yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'd heard of Camus, but now maybe I need to read some. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yes, he's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. Wonderful, wonderful, fantastic. Well, I think Pat and all of the other future listeners, because the alien archaeologists will come down eventually, will be desperate to know how can they see more of your comedy, Ella, and where should they go online to kind of like find out more about what you're doing?
You can find me at Ella Clark on Instagram, but that's Ella with 2 A's and Clark with 2K's. So Ella Clark, because obviously Ella Clark was taken because she's a netball player. And on there you can find a link tree and links to the shop and stuff like that. I was recently in the semi-final of the Chortle Student Comedy Award, and there is an online vote as to whether or not my set goes through to the final, which will be coming out with a video of me. My semi-final set will be on the Chortle website within the next sort of 2 to 3 weeks or so, and I'll pop a link to my Instagram then. So if for some reason you feel the need to vote on that, that would be very lovely, because that would mean I get to go to Edinburgh.
Yeah, but Pat, we're looking at you. This is your job now.
Pat, you wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thanks everyone. Remember, you can help support comedians on technology, people, and drugs by going to our Facebook group and commenting or asking questions there, or on Spotify. Please do follow us on Spotify. I mean, actually, I'm not really supporting the Facebook group in as much as, like, now when I post on Instagram, it automatically goes to my Facebook page. And anyway, Spotify, that's the thing. You follow us there. We need more followers, and then the podcast will get out, and Pat will have some companion audience members. And we look forward to being in all of your ears again soon. Last word to our fantastic guest, Ella Clark.
Microwaves are less effective when they're dirty, so clean it and it will be faster.